clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co.
Hi folks, I think this is the third one of these series that I'm doing from clubpod.co. Now, this is going to be a short one, but a little bit of advice. Now, if you're planning on setting up a podcast, you don't need to do this, but my advice is get a website set up as well. Probably the easiest is a WordPress site. Now, you don't need to pay anybody. There's a guy near me who charges, well, it's a small company, £1,000 for something I do free. I mean, I don't know how they can justify what they do. They don't even do a very good job. But the amount of people that they pay the amount of businesses, should I say, near me that I've chatted to who've given this bunch of cowboys, and I'm going to call them cowboys, I'm not naming them anyway, so it doesn't matter, but they've all paid £1,000 for basically a simple WordPress site. Now, it's not difficult to set up a WordPress site, really easy. Now, and you can do other things. You can do a basic site. There's a lot of firms doing that'll offer to do your website where you can do it yourself. Blah blah blah. The reason I'm saying do a WordPress, I've got the hiccups. A WordPress site is because you can do it. It's very powerful, the system. You can get lots of plugins, all free. I mean, you can pay for stuff as well, but it's incredibly powerful. And you don't need to know anything really. You'd be surprised how easy. So even if you're thinking, oh, scary stuff doing a website, it's not. But the first thing you need to do is get a domain name. Now, my advice is get something like a .com or .co. If you get something like a .net, it doesn't sound as good. And if you're creative, there's still a lot of domain names out there. I pick them up quite a lot. So now, it's just that a lot of people will naturally type .com at the end. So it's a useful thing to do. The domain name isn't expensive. Seem to have got more expensive in the last few years. I used to get them about half what I pay now. But you're looking at, let's say, 10, 20 to £20. You might get them cheaper as a .com yearly. You'll be paying it yearly. I mean, you can pay for several years if you want. Make sure you have it on auto renewal, because otherwise what happens is you won't pay, you'll forget and not pay, and then suddenly it vanishes and somebody else might pick it up and you haven't noticed, and getting it back is almost impossible. Now, oh dear, sorry, I'm just thinking what I was going to say then. Don't be tempted to go with the cheapest. That's what I was going to say, because over the years I've known people buy domain names with really cheap hosting firms, and they think, oh, they've got a great deal. But then if they want to move it to another, then suddenly it almost becomes impossible. Or sometimes they've even had it sold without their knowledge, and all sorts of disasters. Don't try and, for sake of a couple of quid, don't go with the cheapest. Even some of the well-known ones. Some of them I've heard horror stories. I won't obviously because I'll be sued like crazy for saying over this, but be very, very careful who you go with, because I see people thinking they're getting bargains, and this bargain turns out to be the most expensive thing they've ever done. Now, it's alright if you're buying throwaway domain names, what you call feeders. Say if you've got a main site and you just want to send traffic to it, people set up tiny little sites, and they're not bothered if those sites they lose. But the main one, that's basically what you call your baby, I'd say. Now, once you've got that, then you can go find hosting. You don't have to go with a firm that you've bought the domain name from. So none of my sites are hosted with the firms I've bought the domain names from. I keep them separate. Mainly because if there's ever a billing issue, it's less of a problem. I did go ages ago with one firm, but they ripped me off. They suddenly decided they wanted more money, and because I was for hosting, and because they wouldn't let, it was a real nightmare situation. They were con artists. But anyway, these days, if you find hosting, most, if not all, and hosting isn't expensive, for a single domain website, you don't need like a dedicated server. If you're say doing the pictures and videos, hosting themselves, you need your own dedicated server. When it's just a simple WordPress site, you don't need a lot, so it's usually quite cheap. Don't be tempted to go free host. It's never worth it, because you don't find as many now. There used to be a lot, but a lot went bust or crashed, all sorts of disasters. The stress you'll go under when your site goes down because you've tried to save a few quid, gone free, it's just not worth it. So get a decent host. I'm sure there's firms I'd recommend, but I don't like recommending things, because if something goes wrong, then you're going to say it's my fault, and I've had that in the past when I recommended a computer firm to somebody. It was my friend's computer firm, and they actually didn't rip this guy off, but the guy just wanted him to come back. It made the guy travel 300 miles twice, just because he was just being a jerk. And so I learnt my lesson there. I'm very careful about recommending, because you think you're doing somebody a favour, and then it's you ends up in the doo-doos. So find a host, but most will, and just check with them, will offer WordPress. And often all you need to do is, they'll do it for you if you struggle. I do this, and I can have a WordPress site going in under, I think, less than a minute. It's very simple. In the old days, you used to have to upload the software yourself, but even then it wasn't that difficult. Once you sussed it out, it's quite simple, but these days it's literally, you usually just press a button and it'll download the software and everything, and then it's just a case of playing about, making it look like you want. So there's thousands of themes to choose from, so you look for a theme you like. Some I find work, some that mess your site up, so try a few, see what you like the look of, and then there'll be a lot of plugins. One I will say to do, it's part of the WordPress family type thing, is Jetpack. That's, if you don't have that on your thing, I think you're crazy. It should really come as standard with WordPress. I don't know why it's separate, but put that on. Now, the advantage of doing this is that every time you do a podcast, you can write about it and embed it on the page as the blog. You have on WordPress you can have posts and pages. So if you understand what a blog is, that's what you post. But and the advantage of doing this is you can write and post pictures along with a blog post. And if you do it nice, sometimes people mess up and they write too much and it's just all text, boring. But if you get skilled at it, you can just work out enough text not to overload somebody, because people don't want to read a ton. Sometimes they do, some things will call for a lot of text, but a lot of times you don't need a huge amount. And it's nice to actually put some pictures as well. So if you was to cover an event, you could post pictures and a bit of information. And also, if you quote something, so if you're talking about a news story, you can put the links so people can check them out themselves. Because one of the advantages, not advantage, but if you ever start talking about a subject, and so let's say you're talking about something in the news, it's always worth putting a link to that news source so people can check it out. Also avoids you being sued, and also, it's not like you're covering your back really, so you can show people. So the other day I was talking about something on a blog, and what annoys people is I always back everything up. So everything I said, I backed up with main sources, not some sort of dodgy nut job website. I'm talking about such as the BBC, Daily Mail, NHS, things like that. What I call university studies, and that way you've got the prime source, and it backs up whatever your argument is. So if somebody wants to come along and say you're wrong, then it's much awkward for them to do it. It's why people get annoyed with them, because they know often I'm quoting sources direct and giving evidence. But you'll still have people claim I'm wrong. You're going, well, the evidence there. Anyway, but it's worth doing. It'll also help you get more viewers, because these days I find Google's a bit rubbish for search engines. In the past, I could load a site up, and I could guarantee I could get to number one position or virtually one position. Now, I don't even try, because I've no idea how it works these days. It doesn't seem to get very high ranking. Most people will, you see, the advantage of doing your website is people will retweet your posts. That's what I do. I have links on it so people can press it, so they can post it on the Facebook page, Twitter, whatever. And that to me is more important, because they'll be posting, if they like what you've done, they'll be posting it to people with similar interests with luck, and in turn they will, it might take a while, you could be talking months, but once the momentum goes, you should find you start getting a lot of natural traffic. You don't need to pay somebody to advertise. Now if it doesn't take off, by the way, don't sit there and go, I don't understand why. This is where you have to start being honest with yourself. Are you producing something that isn't very good? Because it's a bit like I spoke years ago to a guy who ran a business, and he just wouldn't have it. His business sucked. He ran a shop and it was horrible inside. It was dirty, it was great. I went in to help him out, and I just said it's just a disaster. But he wouldn't have it. It was always somebody else's fault that he wasn't getting customers. Then he blamed me. Apparently that was my fault. I'm just putting the dogs in the lead now. So, I've got it around my neck. Oh, hang on. Might be a bit of a noise. I'm just disconnecting. I had the mic connected to the leads. There we go. So if I'm being proper, I'll edit that noise out, but I might be a bit lazy. Oh dear. Dum. Now, I don't know if this is recorded, because my battery's pretty much dying of death, and I do find I'm surprised how quickly the batteries do drain on these recording devices. So, and that's another little tip: carry lots of batteries with you, or power, whatever, because there's nothing worse. I've done this quite a lot of times. I've been doing great speeches thinking this is the best I've ever done, only to find that the machine's just died and hasn't recorded anything. The one I've got doesn't, it only records at the end, saves it. So if you recorded, so you've been doing half an hour, it doesn't save, which is a bit of a poop. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. Like I said, you don't have to buy a website or web domain or anything. but I just think it's nice. I've actually gone on quite a few sites, podcast sites, and it's quite nice to see, or sometimes it's nice to read about what they've done, or say comedian. I like to read what they've posted, and it also means that you can link to other mediums. You can use it as what I'd call a hub. So you can put your Twitter and Instagram and any other social media such as YouTube on there. And oh, by the way, I'll probably cover this again. Don't ever rely too heavily on one medium. For instance, I've seen people who made money from Instagram and then lost their account after getting, say, 70,000 followers. You don't ever want to put all your eggs in one basket. This is why hosting stuff yourself's more advantage than relying on others, because the only person who can delete the site is basically you. Well, if you're posting someone else's system, they can close you anytime. Somebody might be rotten and moan about you, anything, lie, and they just close your account. You don't want that to happen, especially if you was making money. All you say you've got, and it's always worth keeping backups of everything just in case. But anyway, that's just a little bit of I put that in as a bit of a bonus today. I'm not sure I made a list of things I was going to talk about. I'm not sure I did that. But as I was walking home and it came to me, I thought I'd mention it. So as I say, let's just check. Well, it is recording. I thought the battery would have died. It's the last bar. And I press record. Again, that's another little trick I've done. I've sometimes turned it off as I'm recording. I end up with a lot. This is real world disasters. On the little device I've got, it's got a hold button. So what I do now is I press this before anything, make sure it's recording, and just because it doesn't take up a lot of space to the files. And recording WAV file rather than any of the others. Recording the highest quality. I'll go through that and get reason why later, but I just press record, turn on the hold button, make sure there's enough power. I usually put in fresh batteries just to make sure, unless I'm 100% sure there's a lot of power in. And then I just leave it to record, and then I know that's one job done. And it's off your mind, rather than doing it forgetting and finding you haven't recorded anything correctly. And then afterwards, just double check it's saved the file. So on my other device, it doesn't always save unless you press the right button in the right order. It's a bit of an awkward thing. So hopefully that's some help for people. But in reality, if you're getting a domain name, think of something nice. Don't buy. I saw years ago somebody on their truck. It had this ridiculously long. It was something or other. Blah blah blah. plc.co.uk. It was ridiculously long. No one's going to remember that. You're better off having something as short that it can be brandable, and it's simple to remember. So say it was. I always say this. You want something that people can just look at once and remember maybe in a week's time, rather than something really long and boring. And it doesn't always sound very good when it's the long domain name. Short just looks nice in the eye. But then again, it's up to you. And there's no reason you can't buy a few different domain names. So if you've got your name, buy that. Doesn't mean you have to use it. It's always worth buying, and then you've got it just in case. Alright then, bye. Piss.
Clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co.